Hey, what's up, everybody? Today we're going to talk about personal finances. And we're going to get even a little more personal than I have in a lot of my other videos because today we're talking about charitable giving. And when it comes to charitable giving, this really revolves around, for me, a lot about my faith. I am a follower of Jesus, and that really impacts all of my life, but certainly impacts the area of giving. Now, you may or may not be a follower of Jesus, but I still think you'll find value in this video either way as we talk about how you determine, what you should give or how you go about that process and what that practically looks like, especially being a self-employed person. But definitely, if you are a follower of Jesus, I think you will find tremendous value in this. At least I hope you do, because that's the reason why I'm creating it. It's simply as an encouragement for you and also to give some practical tips. Now, what this video is not, it is not a pat on the back. I promise you that. You may or may not believe me. I can't help whether or not you believe me, but I assure you that that's not what this is. And that's for a couple of reasons. One, I'm not actually a very disciplined person. All right. I eat way too much dessert when I eat dessert. I don't know when to stop. In fact, I've eaten dessert to the point of feeling really sick before. I don't exercise ever. I take a walk every now and then at lunch, but that is the extent of my exercise. I don't put my clothes away when they're clean. They are clean and folded and on the floor. In fact, there's some over there right now, but you can ask my wife about this. I'll pull clothes off of the floor instead of putting them away and just wear them from there until the next time clothes get washed. All right. I don't do that all the time, but I do it a lot. All that to say, I'm actually not a disciplined person, so I can't really pat myself on the back. I think that my parents helped me develop really good giving habits at a young age, and those have stuck with me. But even more importantly than that, I believe that giving is a spiritual gift that the Lord gives people. And I believe that, God gives all sorts of spiritual gifts in order to equip us for the work that he has called us to do. Spiritual giving is one of those spiritual gifts. And I happen to believe that he has given me that spiritual gift because of my joy around this and my discipline in it. And so again, it does not come from within me at all. It is simply something that he is doing through me to accomplish some of his purposes. So no pat on the back here. Second of all, let's get this out of the way. I'm not using my actual income numbers here. I'm simply using round numbers so that it makes the math easier. All right. So don't even worry about trying to figure that out. All right, let's jump in. The questions that I hear frequently, and again, being from a background of a follower of Jesus, a lot of people that I've talked to have this question, should I give or tithe? Now the tithe, right, is a tenth. It's a biblical concept of giving a tenth of what you have to the Lord. People often ask, should I tithe off of my gross or my net income? All right, I've heard this question a lot. And it's a good question. I mean, some people might think it's not a good question, but I'm not here to knock questions. I think that that's a good question. I think a lot of people have that question, especially based on conversations I've had. A lot of people have this question. Now, there's an answer that Dave Ramsey gives, if you're familiar with him. And I strongly dislike his answer. His answer is, well, do you want a gross or a net blessing? All right. Now, I'm not going to sit here and preach, but I'm going to give a few of my thoughts on this. I think that revolves it all around yourself. God is not obligated to give you a gross or a net blessing. He is not obligated to give you any sort of blessing off of your giving. It's not like credit card rewards where for every dollar spent, you get $1 of points or rewards back. All right. So that answer centers it on being selfish, and it seems to obligate God to bless you because you have given. Now, you are saved by grace through faith so that no man can boast, all right? God is not up there looking at, did Brad give 10% or 9%? So I'm going to bless him at a 10% or a 9% rate. All right, this is absolutely ridiculous. Now, I don't know if that's what he actually means. It probably isn't, but I just dislike that answer for that reason. You are blessed by God because you are a child of God once you accept Jesus Christ and you are adopted into his family, all right? Our blessings are not tied to how well or how poorly we follow God or live out his commandments, okay? This is over and over again in the Bible. Now, there is the principle of reaping and sowing, right? You reap what you sow, and that principle, I think, does come into play with giving, but it's different than being blessed by God, okay? And there is also the concept of rewards in heaven based on things that you do here on earth in this life. But again, that's completely separate from God's blessing when you say, do you want a gross or a net blessing? Let's just move on, okay? I really dislike that answer. What I think is taught in the whole of Scripture, from the Old Testament to the New Testament. Again, this idea of tithe shows up with Abraham, the first person to do this in the Old Testament, and he does it without God asking for it. It is something that he comes up with on his own. He gives a tenth of everything that he had from a particular event and gives it to Melchizedek, who is a priest. All right. That's the first time. There are other elements of the tithe in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, the tithe is really only mentioned once, I believe. Someone asks Jesus about a couple of things, and the tithe is involved in there. I should have looked this up before I did the video, but it's involved in there. And all Jesus says about the tithe is you should not have neglected the former and still done the latter, or something like that. So all he basically says is you shouldn't have neglected to do the tithe, but he doesn't really affirm it very strongly. And then when you look at Paul's teachings and the rest of the teaching of the New Testament, take that in context of the whole Bible. What God really cares about is your heart. He wants you to be a cheerful and joyful giver. All right. And so when people ask me, do you think I should tithe off the net or the gross? I ask them, what can you do joyfully and cheerfully? That is the amount you should give. Now, if that's off the gross, great. If it's off the net, great. If it's 10%, great. If it's 2%, great. If it's 20%, fine. Give what you can give cheerfully and joyfully, and do that. And do it. And if it changes, it changes. Give more if you can do it joyfully and cheerfully. God wants your heart. He wants your heart to be as his, to give to his kingdom work because you want to give to those who are in need because you have compassion and love just like he does. And so give what you can give cheerfully and joyfully. All right. That's what I believe is the right answer to that question. And it's what's going to cause you to honestly be a larger giver. Okay. So that's kind of my little bit of a sermon. Let's jump into the practicality. All right. So people ask, should I give off of net or gross? A lot of times, the majority of people are not self-employed. They're W-2 workers. They work for a company and they get a paycheck, a salary, a W-2. And they want to know, do I give off of my salary, which is $80,000, or do I give off of my net paycheck, which might end up being, $65,000 a year after payroll taxes and income taxes, right? So that's the gist of the question. It gets even more complicated when you're self-employed. People want to know, should they give off of their business income or what they actually take out into their personal budget? So there's a lot of numbers here. And so, let's just jump into some practicality. Now, I want to say again, give what you can give joyfully and cheerfully. That's what I do. This is going to walk through how I come up with what I give. You still got to start somewhere, right? And I told you, I'm not disciplined in a lot of areas of my life, but I am with finances. And all budgeting is being intentional. I want to be intentional with where my money goes, and I want to be intentional with giving. In fact, I want to put giving first in my budget because what happens most of the time is people will put their housing payment in their budget. They'll put their car payment in their budget. They'll put the groceries in their budget. They'll put their vacation in their budget. They'll put their TV, their internet in their budget. And really what's left over is a lot of times, not a lot. I mean, the average savings rate in America is actually negative. That means most people are spending more than they actually make. The giving rate for believers and non-believers is pretty low. It's 3% or less of their income that they're actually giving. And that's to charitable events. Kind of sidebar here. To do kingdom giving, God doesn't care if you're giving to organizations that can give you a taxable receipt so that you can deduct your charitable giving on your tax return. Now, if you do give to those events or to those organizations, you might as well get the receipt, might as well get the deduction. There's no ethical problem or spiritual problem with taking a deduction if the government's going to give it to you and you already gave anyway. That's obviously not your motivation probably for giving, but might as well take the deduction if it's there. But that said, if you help the less fortunate or you help a family member, all of that God sees from your compassionate, joyful, and cheerful heart of giving to others. It doesn't matter if it's deductible or not, right? That's obvious. So being intentional means just putting it in there from the beginning. All right. So this is how I do it. I do use some percentages here, but it's not the point. It's not to get legalistic about this. I'm going to reiterate, joyful and cheerful heart. I do it this way. I think that it might help you out to see how one person does it. We don't talk a lot about giving. We don't talk a lot about finances in our country or within the church. It just doesn't get talked about a lot, and I want to change that. So that's part of what this video is as well. So let's look at this real quick. This is the practical example. I'm self-employed. And that gets a little more complicated. Plus the W-2 is in here as well. So it'll cover people who aren't self-employed as we walk through this. But let's jump into this example. So let's say the gross income in my business, this is income that comes into the business, is $200,000. All right. This is going to be before any business expenses. And then let's say, I pay my business expenses. So for me, the largest business expenses that I have as a CPA is payroll. I have an employee. That's a large one. And then software. Software is a really large one. So that's going to give you a net income in your business of $150,000. So you charge people $200,000. You have business expenses of $50,000. Your net income is $150,000. That's what you have left at the end of the day in your business. But you might want to keep some of that in your business. Now, your business needs operating cash flow, right? And it also needs some buffer in case next year is lower than this year, income's not as high, some people don't return, whatever. So you want to retain $20,000 in your business, all right? Again, just for the example, we're just using big round numbers and not worried about what this is for. Other videos for why you might want to keep this in the business, all right? So if I made 200, I had business expenses of 50, I have 150 left, and I want to keep 120 in the business, then that means I can pay myself $130,000, all right? So 200 minus 50 is 150, 150 minus 130 is 20, 20 is left in the business. I'm going to pay myself $130,000. I'm going to take that out of the business for my personal expenses. I'm an S corporation, so when I take this out, it's going to come out in two ways: as W-2 income, like a typical employee, and as owner distributions because I'm the owner of the S corporation. Now, if you're a self-employed Schedule C sole proprietor business, it's only going to come out as distributions. All right, don't worry about that, but this is an S corp. So let's say W-2 wages are $80,000. And like I said, if I'm pulling out 130, that means my owner distributions are $50,000. 80 and 50 is the 130. I'm going to pull it out as W-2 and owner distributions. I am going to pay income tax on 150,000, okay? You might not understand that, but that's how the tax system works. If you're self-employed and you pull out 130 as owner distributions, you're still taxed on 150 because that's your net income for the business. As an S corporation, that's the net income from the business. I will pay income tax on the full 150 no matter what I left in the business. I will pay payroll taxes on this 80. So on the 80, I'm paying income tax and payroll tax. On the 50 plus the 20 to make the full 150, I'm paying just income tax, all right? So payroll taxes and income taxes on the whole thing. I'm looking at probably for this situation, if this is the only income that you have and you do it this way, you're looking at about $30,000 in tax, all right? So 130 minus 30 leaves you with 100. All right. Now the question is, I told you I've got 100 left now, but I'm going to give before I do any of the rest of my budget. That's what I do. I put that in there first so that I give what I want to give. How do I determine what I'm going to give, where I'm going to give it, and how I break it up? Okay. This is what I do joyfully and cheerfully. Again, just as one way to look at this. The Lord provided this for me. Okay, he provided me with the 200,000. Now there are in the Old Testament, I believe that it talks about giving the tithe off of your increase. Okay, that increase is a pretty significant word to me, I think, and it goes into my interpretation of this. But the Lord has given me increase of $200,000 that has come into my business, which has allowed me to pay an employee and for software and for office and to pay all my expenses. It has allowed me to pay myself, to retain money in the business, to pay the taxes. So same thing with my gross income. I did this when I was a W-2 employee. I gave off of my gross because the Lord provided me an increase of, let's say, $80,000 to pay my taxes and other expenses with. So I treat that as the increase. So I start with 10% of this gross number. That is what I'm going to give, $20,000. Now that's going to leave me with 130 minus 30 is 100 minus 20 is 80. All right. That's going to leave me $80,000 for my personal budget. So let's pause real quick and look at this because this is just a side note for self-employment purposes for those who want to start their own business or are running their own business. If you need, bottom line, at the end of the day, $80,000 of cash in your budget to pay your rent, your mortgage, your property taxes, your groceries, your vacationing, everything, right? You need $80,000. Look at what you need to make. Top line. Now, obviously, business expenses will change from business to business. Taxes will change based on amount of income. You need a different amount down here. But basically, you've got to you know what you need. So you got to back into this number. And the gap between this number, the 80 and the 200, is much more significant than most people think. They might think, to get 80, I need to make 100. Or to get 80, I just need to make 90. Or to get 80, I need to make 120. Well, you can see in this particular example, to get 80, you need $200,000. So that's just a quick caveat to make sure you plan well before you jump into being self-employed, all right? So I choose to give 10% off of this gross number, which I view in my mind as what the Lord has given me as increase in a typical year. Now, I split that $20,000 up differently because, again, people say, well, if you're going to tithe, does the tithe have to go to the church? What about supporting missionaries? What about giving to other things? What about giving to family members or neighbors who are in need? Okay. Well, I've got a way that I do that personally. And what it is this. All right. I'm going to give 10% off of that. That's $20,000. Where I'm going to give it is to the church and to other. All right. Church is a local congregation. This is where I go every week. This is where I know people, where I am shepherded and fed by my pastor, whom I love. And that's what I'm going to give there. What do I give? Do I give this whole 10%? Okay, this is, again, just the way that I've broken it down in my mind. I don't think the Lord is up there too worried about this, right? He certainly cares, but I don't think that I'm going to get up there and he's going to say, you should have slid 1% one way or the other, right? I don't think that's going to happen. He wants my heart, joyful and cheerful, and that's what I do. So to the church, I give 10% of what I took out of the business. 80 and 50 is 130. Before taxes, I give that 10% to the church, so that's going to be $13,000. Now, I told you I give 20 total, so the other 7, I'm going to set aside to give to other things, all right? And this is just how I stay disciplined. This is how I know that when something comes up, I will have the ability to do what the Lord is calling me to do, all right? This comes out quarterly usually because of the way that I pay myself, or the way that, it's a little different being self-employed, but basically every paycheck or on a regular basis, this is going to the church based on this number as it comes in throughout the year. That's going to the church. This is getting set aside in my budget. And we can talk about personal budgeting, how you do that, but this is just getting set aside for when the Lord puts an opportunity before me or puts something on my heart. All right. A friend that I know is going on a mission trip. That's where this is going to come from. A neighbor loses their job and is in tough times and needs some help, and it comes up. This is where I'm going to give for that. There's a homeless person. I'm going to give from this. The things that come up from compassion and love for other people, unique opportunities that are outside of what I'm given to regularly, supporting missionaries on a monthly basis. That's all coming out of this number. And again, I do it this way so that is there, because in my personal budget, if someone or an opportunity comes and I haven't already done this, I'm going to be scrambling and looking like, I want to give to this, but where do I pull it from? Budget's kind of tight. I've already got everything set aside. I've already spent everything. I got some savings over here. Where I give that from? Okay. So this is just intentionality, right? It's doing what I want to do and what I feel joyful and cheerful about, what I feel like the Lord has called me to do. And so that's what I do. Now, usually there's money sitting in that account, right? Because, it's not like there's something coming up all the time. But let's say that is out. I still might find money that's saved in another spot or somewhere else to give above and beyond this, because there's no limit to what you can give. You don't have to stop here, right? All right. So that's the gist of it. This is how I walk through it. Again, I use percentages here and there. I talk about gross and net. The bottom line is, however you do it, figure it out for yourself with a prayerful heart that can give joyfully and cheerfully to kingdom work, right? Kingdom work. Do support your local body because they're there. They deserve to be paid for the good work that they're doing. There's scripture about that too, how those who earn their living from preaching the gospel, or those who preach the gospel should earn their living from the preaching of the gospel. Support the local church. but give to other kingdom work too. You know, give to what you feel God has put on your heart that you can joyfully and cheerfully support. That's the bottom line here. So, you know, if you need to use percentages to just give yourself a frame of reference, that's what I need. I need percentages to give myself a starting point. Like I said, I might give above and beyond this if something moves me to. But I start by giving this and pulling from this amount of money that I've intentionally set aside to do for this purpose. So again, this video is a little bit different than my other ones. My name is Brad. I'm with Wooten CPA. My goal is to bring peace to your financial and tax responsibilities. One of the ways I do that is through these videos. Please subscribe to the channel so you see other videos that come out. And a little bit different for this particular video, go ahead and like it and share it in order to encourage others. That again was my goal, is to encourage people to be generous. It's encouraging people to be joyful and cheerful givers. That's what I want. That was my main goal behind recording this video. Thank you for watching.